Another year is come and gone, and many of us are not the same people we were but 12 short months ago. I've moved across the ocean to a new country. Sullivan moved to a place with heating, which I have learned is not very common in this country. Pete found his true calling as a mole sticking his head out of the ground. So many changes. And many of those who grace our television screens each week are also not who they were this time last year. Maybe in a personal growth sense, maybe in a split personality sense that grew more and more concerning every week Elias tried to tell the world he was his own brother. There were lots of slight shifts in character each week with loads of heel turns and babyface turns, but today we are going to be taking a look beyond that to the gimmick changes that truly set our faces to stunned. I'm Tempest, hailing from partsFUNknown, and these are the 10 most shocking gimmick changes of 2022. But before we get on with our list, make sure of course that you like this video, subscribe, and enable notifications to always on so that you never miss a fun bit of wrestling list just like it, and you too can change who you were just 5 short minutes ago by being someone who wasn't subscribed to partsFUNknown by subscribing to partsFUN. Just please do it. Number 10. Elias. Elias had pretty much reached his ceiling as a character under the Vince regime. He's a man with a guitar who sings mean songs about the town he's in, or if he's feeling cheery, he sings nice songs about the town he's in. Not exactly an ogre level character with those layers, but then we got our introduction to the newest member of the Samson family, Ezekiel. Ezekiel's character was that he was categorically not Elias, going so far as to take a lie detector test to prove that he was not, in fact, Elias. I don't know what the end game of this character was, and truthfully no one in WWE knew either. The joke was his name was Ezekiel, and they were going to bash you over the head with that punchline every week like it was a surgical 2x4. The character quickly ran out of steam and was promptly killed off by Kevin Owens once Triple H took over, and Elias woke up from his coma or whatever as soon as his beard grew back in. At least we got this Samson family photo complete with Elias playing every member of this cursed family tree Eddie Murphy style. Number 9. Juice Robinson. Juice Robinson has pretty much always had a large amount of flair in his character. His tree hugger gimmick didn't quite fly in New Japan, and instead he became flamboyant Juice Robinson, a man who wore incredibly ridiculous outfits complete with hats, glasses, and loads of tassels. Juice also seemed as if he had plateaued in New Japan after years of mid-card work and could have been primed to leave the company, but instead reappeared at Wrestling Dontaku as the newest member of Bullet Club. As far as heel turns went in 2022, this one it was about as shocking as you could get, with Juice completely changing the presentation of his character from flamboyant showman to gritty Bullet Club baddie, joining forces with longtime rival Jay White. Personally, I always thought Jay White should be the one to adopt Juice Robinson's style, because who doesn't want to see flamboyant Jay White? Anyone? Unfortunately for Juice, the change in character hasn't brought him immediate success, mustering only 4 points in the 2022 G1 Climax and losing to Jon Moxley on the September 28th episode of AEW Dynamite. Juice is now reportedly signed to AEW, so maybe he and his new attitude can get the chance to break out in 2023. Number 8. Butch. By the time Vince McMahon left WWE, he was breaking out every single name and gimmick change he could possibly think of. One of the earliest ones in 2022 that got much of wrestling Twitter riled up was when Vince took NXT Bruiserweight, joint manipulator, and all-around excellent wrestler Pete Dunne and turned him into Sheamus's scrappy dude named Butch. Butch would act like a petulant child, throwing tantrums and running off to beat up whoever was angering him at the time as soon as Sheamus and Ridge Holland turned their backs. Pete Dunne was never the best promo by any means, but the initial run of the Butch character seemed intent to tear down everything that made Dunne such a special performer, purely in the name of giving him quote-unquote a character. I mean, for f***'s sake, he looks like a goddamn chimney sweep. Thankfully, one of Triple H's great triumphs since taking over has been the rehabilitation of the Brawling Brutes, turning the group into a band of babyfaces based on just being tough and having great matches. And thankfully, that has meant that while he is still indeed called Butch, he is much closer to the presentation of Pete Dunne that probably didn't need changing in the first place. Number 7. Maximum Male Models. The last vestiges of retribution were finally done away with in 2022. T-Bar was at long last freed from his commitments of being a piece of metal in the shape of a letter, returning to NXT as Dijak, also shedding the mouthful that was Dijakovic, which he only had to deal with because Dominik Dijakovic would be confused with Otis Dozovic. And if you ever think that WWE's naming process is dumb, that's because it is. Speaking of which, WWE wanted something different for LA Knight's main roster call-up, so rather than being LA Knight, fast-talking NXT standout, he was Max Dupree, spokesperson for Maximum Male Models. It wasn't exactly the highlight of Knight's career, and he would eventually revert back to his LA Knight ways, but it did save the other surviving member of Retribution from their fate of being a blunt instrument, as Mace became Mace and Mansoor became Mansoor. Truthfully, these names are a bit of fun, and I doubt anyone ever looked at this as a potential main event of WrestleMania act, so as a new coat of paint to give Mace and Mansoor something completely new to do, this is just stupid fun pro wrestling. Mace in particular really nailed those poses, goddamn. Number 6, Axiom. Ladies and gentlemen, making their NXT debut, hailing all the way from Siberia, Axiom, the math-loving luchador who just happened to end up looking like the pre-existing indie wrestler Razorwing by pure coincidence. They even have the same pose! What are they playing at down in NXT? Previous to the gimmick change, Axiom was Spanish wrestling wizard A-Kid, which, even for someone like myself who really likes the wrestling naming archetype of slapping kid onto the end of something, is a name. A-Kid hadn't had much of a character during his time in NXT, and was never the most interesting looking lad, so a gimmick change wasn't an outrageous idea, but the one they settled on sure was wacky. Nothing relates to the youth of today quite like math. If I can see Axiom beat an opponent with a parabola or the Pythagorean theorem, then who am I to doubt the merits of math in wrestling? First, I just need to remember what those things are, because I'm just a dumb YouTuber who majored in media. Number 5, scripts. What is it? What is this? Is there a gas leak at the WWE Performance Center? What is this mask? His introduction is just the stalker voicemails left on the Performance Center answering machine. And then Reginald the Sommelier comes out just like this. The state of this thing. Why is Reggie's name Scripts? With a Y? Like this is Terminator Genesis, which is the only comparison you'll get involving that Terminator dog shit on this channel, but I just can't bear to look at this anymore. We gotta move on. Number 4, the Jericho Appreciation Society. It came as no surprise that Chris Jericho turned heel once again following his match with Eddie Kingston at Revolution. Jericho's babyface run had hit a wall, and he's done his best work in AEW as a heel anyway. Then you throw in the opportunity to go full-blown Vegas performer, and you had Jericho's latest character reinvention with the Jericho Appreciation Society. Jericho's character change wasn't exactly what I would call shocking, nor would I consider the turns of Jake Hager, Sammy Guevara, or 2.0 appalling because of their ties to Jericho or just propensity for ridiculousness in the case of Cool Hand Ange and Daddy Magic. The bit of this entry that puts the shocking in shocking gimmick change would be that of young Daniel Garcia. One of the most talented technical wrestlers in the world turned sports entertainer wearing wild boy band outfits. This would be worked into Garcia's storyline with Bryan Danielson over the summer, a storyline that unfortunately took forever to get nowhere, but one that has left Garcia still a sports entertainer, which we all know is the polar diametric opposite of a pro wrestler. Number 3, the Grizzled Young Veterans. 2022 was the year Tempest finally got to stop reviewing NXT, and boy am I glad that is the case, because I don't think I would have been able to handle what they did to my boys, the Grizzled Young Veterans. One of the best heel tag teams in all of WWE, simply being great wrestlers and great talkers with loads of personality was not enough for those in charge. Instead, they joined a cult of spooky perverts. Joe Gacy is probably a nice man, and he is a very talented wrestler, but his character is one with a toxic radius around it that infects everything that comes near it. The dyad would go on to envelop Ava Raine, aka Simone the Pebble Johnson's NXT run, but changing James Drake and Zach Gibson to Jagger Reed and Rip Fowler, more names picked from a British name generator, and dressing them up like this is just next level. They're the Grizzled Young Veterans! They could have been the new era of NXT's answer to the revival. A couple of technically proficient, world-class cheaters working perfectly opposite some of the quicker, high-flying teams, and instead, they made one of them look like an asylum worker and the other one look like Skinny Kane. Prayers up for Zach Gibson's beard. Number 2, Edge. Judgment Day has been quite a shift for a lot of people in WWE this year. You have Dominic Mysterio becoming Subinic Mysterio, choosing instead to be Rhea Ripley's mulleted arm candy rather than his father's disappointment, and honestly, fair play to him. Rhea herself has taken her goth presentation into the stratosphere. Finn Balor finally turned heel on the main roster, but the most shocking turn of them all has to be all the way back at the group's inception. Back when Edge chose to go from a man happy to be back from retirement to being a Castlevania character. A man who had one too many Brood nostalgia entrances. A man who started his career emulating Gangrel as a vampire and tried to end it emulating Gangrel as a porn director. Edge's time in Judgment Day didn't last terribly long, which was for the best as he works much better as the still capable babyface in peril now, rather than the heel slowing things down. After beating AJ Styles and Finn Balor at Backlash, the group turned on Edge, meaning at the very least he could bring back Metalingus, because I don't care if his new song is good, getting rid of Metalingus should be punishable with 3 to 5 years. And number 1, Bray Wyatt. It didn't take long for White Rabbit Fever to sweep the wrestling business, although now that I say that, I'd like to walk that back because we really don't need another sickness sweeping the industry, thank you very much. Teases of White Rabbit-related things began circulating soon after Triple H took over WWE, and sure enough, at Extreme Rules we finally got the return of Bray Wyatt. What many then began wondering was what version of Bray Wyatt were we going to get? He wasn't going to return and do his greatest hits, was he? A Fiend mask and some rambly promos and call it a day? No, Bray is more creative than that. Sure enough, what we got instead was a more realistic character, with Bray confronting much of his human emotion having been fired from WWE. And being tormented by a new spooky mask, of course. We've yet to see exactly how Uncle Howdy is going to be fully integrated into the current Bray Wyatt character, and as I'm writing this, it has been 3 months, so maybe we can pick up the pace slightly, but with Bray Wyatt being one of the most creatively minded people in wrestling, it stands to reason that we have not even come close to seeing the full potential of the new Bray Wyatt, but holy heck, is he absolutely nothing like what we've seen from him before. And that's our list. Make sure, of course, that you like this video, subscribe, and enable notifications to always on so you never miss a fun wrestling list just like it. And make sure you check out all of the other end-of-year lists that we've got coming out now and in the future. I'm Tempest. Jam that jam.